In the warm, enveloping folds of your duvet, you hear the not-so-distant intrusion of your alarm penetrating the depths of your slumber, trying to drag you into the land of the awakened. And as usual, you hit for the snooze button. Chances are this is the morning ritual many of us face day in and day out, and yet you always get those lucky few who seem to just bounce out of bed and into life almost seamlessly, every single day. Be it getting out of bed in the morning, learning a new language, starting a new business, or just getting through another day at work. Why is it that some people seem to have an endless supply of motivation, while the rest of us feel like we are just running on empty all the time? Is the situation reversible? Welcome to the Hidden Secrets of Learning podcast. My name is Ruth Zannis and I've been working in learning and education for over 15 years. From day one in the classroom, I knew something was seriously wrong with our learning systems, and I set out to discover and develop better, more effective ways for adults like yourself to learn, process and assimilate knowledge. Each episode I will be sharing with you a secret behind real learning, understanding how we actually learn, the science of learning and the psychology of adult learning behaviour. And if you're lucky, you may even get to experience some of it for yourself. So subscribe and stay tuned. This is the Hidden Secrets of Learning podcast episode 2. Today's episode is called Learn Smarter, Not Harder, Unveiling the Mystery of Motivation. Looking at the world of compulsive behaviour, we take two different forms of motivation and see how we can rewire things to keep our motivation levels high and make our projects succeed. It is a core factor to effective learning, so whether you are someone who prefers to learn alone or learn in a more formal context, this podcast is exactly what you need to hear, so stay tuned and keep listening. When I first went back to university a few years ago in Paris, in France, motivation was a recurrent topic of my classes. I met with two hotly debated words that formed a backbone to a good part of the research going on: Monsieur intrinsique and Mademoiselle extrinsique. The ongoing question was, is motivation more intrinsic, or coming from within yourself, or is it more extrinsic, or dependent on external sources to fire itself up? Something I've always observed from new students is how they love telling me how motivated they are, repetitively so, almost as if the more they repeat the words, the more motivated they will magically become. While I never doubt them in the slightest, the real struggle is not that initial burst of motivation, but being able to harness it so it can continue to fuel your project. For many, motivation will come in a form of achievement, or something you would like to attain, many of which are in the long term and clearly unachievable overnight. Hardships quickly show up and the reality of keeping yourself going day after day comes to the fore. This is where the magic comes to play. What if you were able to transform your motivation from something extrinsic, your long-term goal of achievement, to something intrinsic, an almost addictive compulsion to push forward in your project day after day, whatever is thrown at you? Now, if you've already read some of my articles on achievement, then you'll already have a first clue as to how this may be done. In life, as in business, focus is often put on achievement, big achievements, winning awards and the like. Anything less is considered unimportant and little more than a stocking filler. In thinking this way, however, we could be missing the biggest trick ever. Why so? Let's take a look below the surface at how the brain processes achievement and motivation. It turns out that the one thing that makes us feel so good when we achieve something is the same thing that is behind addiction to drugs such as cocaine, heroin and methamphetamine. Something called dopamine. Dopamine, among many other roles it plays, is known to play a major role in reward-motivated behaviour. When it's released into certain areas of the brain, it creates pleasurable feelings, often the result of positive activities such as eating food and having sex. And it goes without saying that when we experience that rush of pleasure, more often than not, we want to experience it again and again and again, usually doing so by simply repeating the action we have associated with causing that pleasure. Simple. The question is, though, what if we could experience that same rush of pleasure while learning? And what impact would it have on our ongoing motivation to learn? The answer may lie in some controversial research from over 50 years ago. Reward-motivated behaviour in the field of learning is strongly debated, particularly when associated with the research on behaviourism and conditioning, carried out by B.F. Skinner in the 1950s and 1960s. It looks at how behaviour can be influenced based on positive or negative rewards. A classic study being on rats learning to use various levers once they realised that they would get fed, or have a reward once they pressed on them. So I remember doing this project on Skinner in university, and it lasted a couple months, so there was a lot of reading and a lot of research to do, and a lot of the articles said similar things and talked about similar experiments. And then I remember coming across this one article, and it had this anecdote in that I hadn't come across before, and it was of Skinner, and he was talking about his time when he was in college, and that was probably around the time when he was starting his research in the field. And he was saying how he used to share a house with a couple of the students, and I think there were 3 or 4 of them. Anyway, 2 of them shared his love of art and music and all things classical and cultural. And then there was this one student in the house who was really into like sports and football and, you know, hanging out with the guys on the weekend. And so Skinner and his friends decided to run this little experiment, and they took their housemate to an art gallery with them. And while they were looking at the paintings, they staged it so that their football-loving friend just happened to find like a $20 bill or some similar amount, a $20 bill near one of the paintings. And over the following months, they staged similar things and noted over the period of time that their housemate increasingly showed an interest in art. So this was working on his concept of conditioning and behaviourism. Anyway, according to Skinner, their friend became an avid art collector, and he and his friends never let on about their input. Well, I said that this was controversial stuff. But anyway, while most focus today is on this negatively viewed active conditioning and the way a person's behaviour can be negatively or positively influenced through positive or negative rewards, the actual reason and focus behind Skinner's initial research in this area was quite different, and that's what we want to look at today. Skinner was actually a strong advocate against corporal punishment in schools, and often decried a general lack of focus on the teaching process itself. So his interest in behaviourism was actually looking to promote a learning environment where students develop a love of learning and a thirst for knowledge, rather than learning out of fear of being punished. His focus in what became behaviourism and conditioning was actually to create a positive and immediate reinforcement system in the learning process, while banishing the negative reinforcements such as physical punishment, thus directly impacting the motivation of the student in a positive way. So through positive and immediate reinforcements, not only would the students experience that feeling of pleasure, dopamine, while learning, but because, and this is the key point, because of the very short time lapse, they would come to associate it with the learning itself. Now, whether we agree with it or not, behaviourism is present to a certain extent in education today, in the form of reward systems that promote both positive and negative rewards and consequences. Of particular note are the rewards and consequences themselves, grades, certificates, and awards, versus detention, suspensions, and other losses. Now, if we look at each of these rewards closely, we can see that each of them are externally sourced. This means that if one's motivation in learning is to get good grades, to earn certificates, or to win awards, we will be looking at an extrinsic motivation, with any pleasure surge predominantly riding from good grade to good grade, certificate to certificate, or award to award. Now, this naturally creates a long time lapse between the action of learning and the positive reinforcement, the awards and grades, thus making it very difficult to directly connect the feeling of pleasure with the learning itself. So, why is that direct connection at such a short time lapse so important? It's the same reason that can make certain drugs so addictive and some activities so enticing: the instant feeling of pleasure they give. If, for example, addictive substances took 2 or 3 days to take effect, much like the time it takes students to get results back on an assignment, how many of us would actually continue taking them? By creating a system of positive and immediate reinforcements in our learning process, we are 1. Creating a context where we will experience pleasure, and 2. Directly identifying and associating our learning as the source of that pleasure. Once that vital connection is made, we will want to keep on learning, if only to re-experience that feeling of pleasure again and again and again. And it's at this point that your motivation goes from being extrinsic and for an external reward to something intrinsic and for that buzz you get from within. And once it's rolling, intrinsic motivation can be like having that golden ticket, taking you to places you never thought accessible outside your imagination. Which is all fine and wonderful, I know you're thinking, but how? How can we do that? There are many, many, many ways which over the life of this podcast I will be sharing with you. So if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. And share with your friends so they don't miss out either. But right now, I'd like to try a short 6-step learning experiment with you. I'm going to teach you a word. I'm going to teach you a word in 6 steps. Now, I usually do it visually, but today we're going to try it orally. It may go all pear-shaped because I usually do it on paper. But anyway, let's give it a go. Now, preferably do it out loud. You have to visualize it, but yeah, do it out loud. But obviously, depending where you are listening to this, you can also do it in your head if you have to. But you must do it with me. No exceptions. Right. Okay. So follow with me. Dysmorphophobia is an obsessive fear of being ugly or malformed. It is spelt Dysmorphophobia. Respell it now. Did you get Dysmorphophobia? You did it. Great job. 2. Part of the word is found in the word morph, M-O-R-P-H-E, which means form, and morphology, M-O-R-P-H-O-L-O-G-Y, which focuses on the external structure or visible part of forms and shapes. So now fill in the blanks. So you've got D-Y-S, 6 blanks, P-H-O-B-I-A. What goes in the middle? Very good. M-O-R-P-H-O, morpho, dysmorphophobia. Was absolutely right. Now let's continue. 3. Another part of the word is found in the word dyslexia and evokes an idea of difficulty. Add the missing part here. 3 blanks, and then morphophobia, M-O-R-P-H-O-P-H-O-B-I-A. Is that D-Y-S? Dis, I hear you saying? You are rocking it. Now, give yourself a pat on the back. Are you ready for more? Number 4. Now, in the word claustrophobia, we find the Greek word which signifies fear. Add that bit now to dysmorpho. A blank with 6 spaces. What is it? That's right. Dysmorphophobia. You're now getting too quick for me. Number 5. Here's a good one for you. This letter you get 3 times. D-Y-S-M blank R-P-H blank P-H blank B-I-A. Oh my goodness, you are amazing. Oh. One more for you. Number 6. A person who has an obsessive fear of being ugly or malformed has something called, say it now and spell it. Da-da-da-da. Dysmorphophobia. D-Y-S-M-O-R-P-H-O-P-H-O-B-I-A. You did it. Now, what's that new word you just learned? You got it. Now, write in the comments how easy that was to learn, and take note of one more very important thing. That massive smile you now have on your face. You see what those positive immediate reinforcements just did to you? Awesome, isn't it? And that's what I'm talking about. When learning is done right, it is pure magic, and that's why I'm so excited to be able to share it with you through this podcast so you can experience it too. Learning done right can and will transform your life. Now, thank you so much for listening so far. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and please leave a comment. Now, get out there and start racking up those positive immediate reinforcements and watch your motivation levels rise. Who knows where they will take you? Just try it and see. Now, while mine may always have trouble separating me from my duvet in the morning, I know, they did teach me Chinese in 1 year, and they are still pushing me to greater projects today. Next time, I will be taking you to China, part 1 of a mini series about how I actually learned Chinese in a year, and that was before internet and online learning was actually a thing. And we'll be specifically looking at the secrets of mastering a language once and for all. For more information about the science of learning or to get in touch about collaboration on your learning projects, go to www.ruthzannis.co. That's www.ruthzannis.co. To receive behind-the-scenes updates and join the daily discussion, follow me on Instagram